I buried my husband 2 weeks ago, and the military taught me how to keep my face still even when everything inside me wanted to break. His name was Grant Whitaker. We had been married for 16 years. He was a defense engineer who somehow ended up owning a private island off the coast of Maine, a place he had always forbidden me to visit. Even in our most open conversations, he only called it the property. He would change the subject every time I asked. It became one of those unspoken rules of our marriage, no questions about the island. On the day of the funeral, people kept saying the usual things. He was such a good man. He loved you and Piper. My 19-year-old daughter stood stiff beside me, angry and sad in equal measure. She didn't cry during the service. She stared at the folded flag on the coffin like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I noticed how her jaw clenched the way mine does before a briefing. 2 weeks later, we were in Neil Porter's office, Grant's longtime attorney. Neil's office smelled like old wood and coffee. The blinds were half closed even though the day outside was bright. Piper sat in the corner scrolling through her phone, eyes red but defiant. She blamed me for a lot lately, mostly for not telling her about the island. The truth is, I hadn't known much myself. Neil cleared his throat and slid a black leather folder toward me. "Sloan," he said, "your husband left very specific instructions. I'm to give you this key and this letter only after his passing." He opened a small box. Inside was a heavy brass key with a blue enamel tag engraved Granite Harbor Island. My stomach tightened. The island had a name. It felt real in my palm. "What's on the island?" I asked. "Grant repurchased it 3 years ago. All taxes and fees are prepaid for 5 years. The deed has been transferred to you." Neil pushed his glasses up his nose. "He also left a video message for you." Piper looked up from her phone. "Wait, Dad owned an island? And you're only telling us now?" Neil glanced at me. "Your father insisted on secrecy until his death." I opened the envelope. Grant's handwriting was precise, almost military. "Sloan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for keeping this from you. The island is yours now. I've prepared it for you and Piper. Please go there before making any decisions. On the main desk is a hard drive with everything you need to know. Password is the date we met, plus your maiden name. Trust Owen Hale to help you on arrival." "Owen Hale?" I didn't recognize the name. Piper's voice cracked. "Why would Dad hide an entire island from us? And who's Owen?" Neil handed me another paper. Grant also left a video on this USB drive. He recorded it 6 months ago. I plugged it into Neil's computer. Grant's face appeared on the monitor, healthy and strong, not the pale man from his final weeks. He looked straight into the camera. "Sloan, if you're seeing this, it means I'm gone. I bought Granite Harbor Island for reasons I couldn't explain while I was alive. I needed time to set conditions. Please don't trust Mara." My stomach dropped at the sound of that name. Mara Whitaker, Grant's older sister. "She'll try to challenge the estate," Grant continued. "She's already in financial trouble. She'll act like she wants to help you manage the island, but she's after what's there. Be careful." The video ended. Piper stared at the screen, then at me. "So Dad thought Aunt Mara was dangerous? She's been texting me nonstop since the funeral. She says she just wants to help." I turned to Neil. "Has she filed anything yet?" "She's contacted a lawyer about contesting the will," Neil said carefully, "but nothing official yet." Outside, the traffic hummed. Inside, I felt the click of a switch. The Navy had trained me to move from shock to action. My husband had left me a private island, a warning, and a key. His sister was circling. This wasn't just grief anymore. It was a mission. "I need emergency leave from my unit," I said quietly. Neil raised an eyebrow. "You're still active?" "I'm transitioning to the reserves," I replied. "I still have some pull." Piper crossed her arms. "We're really going there? To the island?" "Yes." I closed the laptop. "Today." We left Neil's office with the key and the envelope. On the sidewalk, the spring air felt sharper. Piper walked ahead, her phone pressed to her ear. I heard her say, "Aunt Mara," and slowed my pace. She hung up quickly when she saw me watching. "What did she want?" I asked. "She says we should meet," Piper muttered. "She says she knows things about Dad. Not without me." My voice came out harder than I intended. Piper rolled her eyes but didn't argue. That evening I called my commanding officer and requested emergency leave. I cited family estate matters and got approval for 2 weeks. I booked a small charter flight to Maine, then a ferry from the mainland to Granite Harbor Island. The entire process felt like prepping for deployment documents, transport, contingency plans. At dawn, Piper and I boarded the plane with 2 duffel bags. She kept her headphones on, staring out the window. I studied the printed maps Neil had given me. Granite Harbor Island was larger than I expected, over 200 acres, with a main house, outbuildings, and a small private dock. According to Neil, Grant had installed a self-sustaining energy system and upgraded all structures. When the ferry approached the island, the first thing I noticed was the lighthouse at the northern tip, its beams still functional. The main house rose above the trees, a mix of New England classic and modern lines. The dock was empty, except for a single man standing at the end, hands clasped behind his back. "You must be Commander Mercer," he called as we stepped off. His voice carried easily over the water. I tightened my grip on the duffel. "And you're Owen Hale?" "Yes, ma'am." He extended a hand. He was in his late 50s, lean and weathered, wearing a faded work shirt. "Your husband hired me to manage the property. He told me to expect you." Piper looked around. "This place is insane. Why didn't Dad bring us here?" Owen hesitated. He had his reasons. He was a careful man. We walked up the dock toward the main house. The path wound through tall pines and opened onto a gravel drive. The buildings looked immaculate, fresh paint and new roofs. Solar panels gleamed on one outbuilding. Inside the main house, the air smelled of lemon oil and salt. Large windows faced the ocean. Everything was neat, almost staged. On the desk in the study sat a rugged external hard drive with a sticky note. Password same as in letter. Before I could reach it, Owen cleared his throat. "Ma'am, there's something you should see first. The boathouse was broken into last night." I straightened. "By who?" "Don't know. I found the lock pried open this morning. Nothing obvious missing, but your husband kept some sensitive equipment there." Piper's eyes widened. "This is like a spy movie." "It's not a movie," I said flatly. "It's our life." I followed Owen to the boathouse. The door hung slightly ajar. Inside, the smell of diesel and seaweed mixed. Toolboxes sat open. A small security camera above the door had been ripped down. "Your husband installed a full surveillance system," Owen said. "I'll check the backup feeds, but whoever did this knew what they were looking for." I crouched near the broken lock. "We'll need new security protocols immediately. Can you handle that?" "Yes, ma'am. And true one." When we returned to the house, Piper was at the desk, staring at the hard drive. "Should we open it?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "First we secure the property. Then we see what your father left." Owen nodded. "Smart approach. Grant always said you thought like a tactician." I looked out the window at the ocean beyond the dock. Somewhere out there, someone had already tried to breach this island. My sister was texting my daughter. My husband's warning echoed in my head. This was no longer just about grief. It was about control, protection, and understanding exactly what I'd inherited before anyone else could take it from me. I tightened my jacket against the wind as we walked back up the gravel path from the boathouse. Salt stung the air. Piper kept glancing over her shoulder at the water, her phone still clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Owen walked a few steps ahead, scanning the trees as if he could sense movement. Inside the house, the hard drive still sat on the desk. I picked it up and slipped it into my bag. "We'll deal with this after we get a handle on the security," I said. Owen nodded and headed toward the small control room near the kitchen where the camera feeds were routed. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. The place was spotless, stocked with new appliances and basic supplies. Piper sat at the counter, drumming her fingers. "I can't believe Dad kept all of this from us," she muttered. "Believe it," I said, pouring 2 mugs. "He had reasons." "He could have at least told me about Owen," she said, glaring at the older man's back as he typed at the console. Owen looked over his shoulder. "Your father wanted to keep you safe. He told me more than once that secrecy was the only way." Piper rolled her eyes. "That's so dramatic." "It's not drama," I said. "It's security." While they traded glances, I opened my laptop and connected to the island's internal network. Years in the Navy had made me comfortable with surveillance systems, and Owen's setup was decent. Several cameras still worked. Some had been disabled. The boathouse feed cut out at 0200 hours the previous night. Whoever broke in knew when to move. I made notes in a small notebook. Check locks, reset passwords, add motion sensors, install a new off-site backup. Grant had left the island in good condition, but the threat wasn't hypothetical anymore. By noon, Piper had wandered outside to explore the deck. I joined her. The ocean stretched endless and gray, dotted with lobster buoys. The lighthouse stood at the far edge of the island, its white tower stark against the pines. "It's kind of beautiful," she admitted. "Creepy but beautiful. It's ours to manage," I said. "Not just some vacation spot." She leaned on the railing. Aunt Mara texted me again. "She says she's worried about you." I kept my voice even. "She'll say whatever she thinks will work. Don't answer for now." Piper frowned but slipped her phone into her pocket. We spent the next hour walking the perimeter with Owen. He pointed out the solar array, the water treatment shed, and the guest house. Everything had a maintenance schedule pinned inside. Grant had been methodical. At the boathouse, Owen knelt to show me a set of footprints in the dust fresh, leading to the back door where the lock was broken. "2 people," he said. "One heavier, one lighter." "Any boats on the water?" I asked. "Only a skiff tied up on the far side yesterday afternoon. It was gone before dawn." I took pictures of the prints with my phone. "We'll file a report with the sheriff's office tonight." Back at the main house, I set up a folding table in the study and spread out the maps Neil had given me. The island's shape looked like a crooked arrowhead, with the lighthouse at the tip and the dock at the base. The bunker entrance was marked near the center. Piper wandered in. "What's all this?" "Planning," I said. "We're not here on vacation. We need to understand what your father built." She crossed her arms. "You sound like you're back on duty." "I never really left." Owen returned with a fresh pot of coffee. "I've reset the main passwords. No one's getting in remotely without the new codes." "Good," I said. "Tomorrow we'll inspect the bunker." Piper groaned. "A bunker? This just keeps getting weirder." "It's a storage and communications hub," Owen explained. "Your father converted it from the old Coast Guard station." She flopped onto the sofa. "Of course he did." The afternoon passed with more checks. Power systems, fuel supplies, emergency radios. Each time I ticked off another item, I felt a little more control returning. Near dusk, a small motorboat appeared briefly on the horizon. I raised the binoculars. No markings. 2 people aboard. They slowed near the lighthouse, then turned away. Owen saw my face. "Want me to log it?" "Yes." Time, direction, description. Piper joined us at the window. "Is that normal?" "Not really," I said. "But it's open water. People can pass by." She bit her lip. "I don't like this." "You don't have to like it," I said. "You just have to stay alert." We ate a quick dinner of canned soup and crackers at the kitchen island. Piper was quiet, staring at her phone but not touching it. Owen told a story about repairing storm damage the previous winter. His voice was steady, but I caught the edge of tension under it. He was used to being alone out here, not dealing with intruders. After dishes, I walked down to the dock alone. The tide had gone out, leaving the pilings slick and dark. The lighthouse beam swept across the water at regular intervals. My boots crunched on the boards. This was the place Grant had chosen to hide whatever he thought was important. This was the place his sister wanted. I thought about the letter again. Please go there before making any decisions. I was here now, but decisions loomed anyway. Sell? Keep? Fight? Behind me, Piper called from the porch. "Mom?" I turned. She stood silhouetted by the light, arms wrapped around herself. "What is it?" I asked, walking back. "She says she wants to come tomorrow," Piper said quietly. "Who?" "Aunt Mara. She says she's on the mainland. She says she can explain everything." "One." I stopped at the bottom of the steps. "And you believed her?" "I don't know," Piper whispered. "She sounded nice." "She's always sounded nice," I said. "That's her skill." Owen stepped out behind Piper, holding a clipboard. "We can control access to the dock," he offered. I exhaled slowly. "Do it. Lock down until further notice." Piper hugged herself tighter. "I just want to know what's going on." "We'll find out," I said. "But on our terms." We went back inside. The house felt different now, less like a retreat, more like a forward operating base. Piper sat on the couch, scrolling through old photos of her father. Owen busied himself at the control panel, muttering about firewall updates. I opened my bag and set the hard drive on the desk again. My fingers hovered over it. The password was in my head. The truth was in there too. But before I plugged it in, I reached for the notebook instead, jotting down a quick plan. Secure the perimeter tonight. Inspect the bunker in the morning. Open the files after. From outside came the faint sound of a buoy bell. The lighthouse beam swept past the window. The tide shifted. Piper yawned and pulled a blanket around her shoulders. Owen shut off a row of monitors, one by one. I closed the notebook and set it aside, watching the key to Granite Harbor Island catch the lamplight where it lay on the table. The next morning I woke before sunrise. The kind of reflex the Navy never lets you lose. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Piper was asleep on the sofa, a blanket tangled around her legs, her phone still glowing faintly on the coffee table. Owen was already outside, his footsteps crunching along the gravel drive as he made his rounds. I filled a thermos with coffee, slipped on my boots, and stepped into the cold morning air. The sky was pale gray, streaked with pink over the water. The lighthouse beam shut off as the sun rose. Owen met me near the shed with a clipboard under his arm. Perimeter checks are clear, he said. No new boats on the horizon. Good, I replied. Let's open the bunker. Piper stirred when I called her name. Do we have to do this now? She mumbled, rubbing her eyes. Yes, I said. The sooner we understand what your father built, the better. She pulled on a hoodie and followed us reluctantly toward the center of the island. The path wound between pines and granite outcrops. Birds scattered as we walked. About halfway in, we reached a low concrete structure built into the side of a hill, almost invisible from a distance. Rusted vents protruded from the ground like periscopes. A heavy steel door stood at the front, secured by an electronic lock and a physical padlock. I took the brass key from my pocket and slid it into the padlock. It clicked open. The keypad beeped when I entered the code Grant had left in his letter. The door swung inward with a groan. Cold, dry air flowed out, carrying the smell of metal and dust. Piper peered over my shoulder. This looks like a bomb shelter. It was a Coast Guard radio station, Owen explained. Decommissioned decades ago. Your father restored it. We stepped inside. The entry hall sloped downward into the earth. Emergency lights flickered on as motion sensors detected us. The walls were painted white, lined with old conduit and new fiber cables. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a large room. It looked like a hybrid between a command center and an archive. One wall held a bank of monitors. Another was lined with metal filing cabinets. Large maps of the Gulf of Maine and the North Atlantic were pinned to corkboards, covered in colored pins and handwritten notes. A long table held binders, sealed envelopes, and a rugged laptop. Piper walked slowly, eyes wide. Dad built all this? Yes, I said quietly. And he kept it off the grid. Owen went to a panel and flipped a switch. Fluorescent lights hummed on, revealing more details. Stacks of waterproof cases labeled Survey Data, Energy Projects, and Legal filled one corner. A safe stood against the far wall. I crossed to the main desk, where a small metal box held a portable hard drive identical to the one upstairs. A sticky note read, Backup, open only after reading primary. Your father was thorough, Owen said. I opened a binder labeled Blue Current Title, Phase 3. Inside were contracts, feasibility studies, and environmental impact reports. One page bore Mara's name under Prospective Consultant, with a question mark next to it. Another folder contained email printouts between Grant and an executive at Atlantic Fiberlink about laying new undersea cables through waters adjacent to the island. Piper pulled a file from a shelf. Look at this. She handed me a stack of receipts showing wire transfers to a shell company linked to Mara. The amounts totaled nearly $2 million. My jaw tightened. He was tracking her, I said. He knew she was moving money. On the opposite wall, a whiteboard listed tasks. Install new sensors, finalize easement with Blue Current, update trust documents, record video for Sloan. The last item was checked off in thick black marker. I sat at the table and opened the rugged laptop. It booted to a password prompt. I entered the code from Grant's letter. A folder labeled For Sloan appeared on the desktop. Inside were dozens of files, scans of deeds, maps, photographs of seabed surveys, and a video file titled, "Watch First." I clicked it. Grant appeared on screen again, this time wearing a fleece jacket inside the very room we were sitting in. He looked tired but focused. "Sloan," he said, "if you're here, you've already opened the bunker. Good. Everything you need is in these files." Mara has been taking money from outside investors, promising them access to the island and to the cable routes. She forged documents to position herself as a trustee. I've been building evidence quietly. Use it before she does, and be careful she won't stop just because I'm gone. The video ended. I stared at the screen for a moment, then closed the laptop. Piper's face was pale. "Aunt Mara did all that?" she whispered. "She did more than that," I said. "She tried to set herself up to take this from us." Owen cleared his throat. "There's also a secondary room behind that door." He pointed to a reinforced hatch at the back of the bunker. "Your father called it the war room. He said it was only for emergencies." I walked over and turned the handle. The door swung open easily. Inside was a smaller chamber lined with corkboards and shelves. Every wall was covered with maps, diagrams of undersea cable routes, lists of names, and copies of legal filings. In the center stood a large table with a tactical-style map of the island, marked with colored stickers: dock, lighthouse, boathouse, perimeter sensors. Piper stepped inside and ran her hand over the table. "It's like he was planning a mission." "He was," I said, "protecting this place." I opened a drawer and found a sealed envelope addressed to me. Inside was a simple note: "If anything happens to me, trust no one but Owen. Use your training, protect Piper." I folded it and slid it into my pocket. Owen moved to a cabinet and unlocked it with a key from his belt. Inside were compact security cameras, spare locks, and a box of old Coast Guard radios. "We can deploy these today," he said. "Do it," I said. Piper sat on a stool, staring at the wall of maps. "Why didn't Dad just tell us? We could have helped him." "He thought secrecy was safer," I replied. "Sometimes it is. Sometimes it isn't." We spent the next 2 hours cataloging what we could. I photographed every map and document, saving them to an encrypted drive. Owen installed new locks on the outer door and tested the ventilation. Piper organized files into piles labeled legal, financial, and technical, her hands shaking but steadying as she worked. By the time we emerged from the bunker, the sun was high. The island looked the same as it had at dawn: trees, rocks, water, but it felt different. Now I knew it wasn't just a retreat. It was a vault of evidence and leverage. Back at the main house, I set the primary hard drive next to my laptop and poured another cup of coffee. Piper sat across from me, hair messy, eyes wide but determined. Owen stood at the window, scanning the water with binoculars. "What now?" Piper asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I watched the lighthouse beam's faint reflection in the sea, the slow rise and fall of the tide, and the brass key on the table between us. I was still at the kitchen table when Piper's phone buzzed again. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Her face flickered between curiosity and guilt. I could see the name even from across the room. "Mara." "Answer it," I said flatly. "On speaker." Piper swallowed hard and tapped the green icon. "Hi, Aunt Mara." "Sweetheart." Mara's voice came through smooth and warm. "I'm so worried about you and your mom. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," Piper said, glancing at me. "I just heard you're on the island," Mara continued. "That place is too much for your mother alone. It's a lot to manage. Your father always wanted you to be part of it. If you're willing, I can put the property in your name so it's protected. We can do this together, just you and me." I watched Piper's fingers tighten around the phone. "Why would we do that?" she asked. "Because your mother is under pressure," Mara said gently. "She's still in the military mindset. She's not thinking long-term. I can guide you, sweetheart. We can turn the island into something positive for the community, and you'll be the one who makes it happen. Your father trusted me. He told me things he didn't tell anyone else." Piper's eyes flicked toward me. "What things?" Mara lowered her voice. "He was planning to leave the island in your name. He told me he regretted not involving you earlier. But it's not too late. We can fix this now before the lawyers and investors tear it apart." I held out my hand. "Give me the phone." Piper hesitated, then handed it over. "Mara, it's Sloan," I said, keeping my tone level. Stop contacting my daughter directly. All matters about the island go through me. There was a beat of silence, then Mara's voice turned sharper. Sloane, you're making a mistake. You don't understand what Grant was doing. You're not equipped for this. I understand enough, I said. And I'm more than equipped. Don't call Piper again without my permission. I hung up before she could respond and slid the phone back to my daughter. She's manipulating you, I said. Piper looked hurt. You don't know that. Maybe Dad really did want me involved. Piper, I said, softer now. Your aunt is in financial trouble. We have proof she's been taking money to promise access to this island. She's not looking out for you. You always think you know everything. She snapped. You kept me in the dark about this island for years. Maybe you're just mad because Dad trusted her more than you. I bit back the urge to argue. Instead, I stood and went to the window. Outside, Owen was checking the locks on the boathouse. Come on, I said finally. You're coming with me. Where? You'll see. We walked down the path to the bunker. Owen met us at the door. Everything's secured, he said. Good. Piper needs to see what's inside. Inside the war room, the air was cool and still. The maps and files lay just as we'd left them. I opened the binder of wire transfers and slid it across the table to her. Look, I said. She flipped through the pages. $2 million? That's what your aunt has already taken from investors, I said. She promised them she'd deliver this island and the cable routes. She can't deliver without our signatures. Piper stared at the numbers. Dad knew? He documented everything, I said. He was building a case. She sank onto a stool. Why didn't he tell me? Because you were 19, I said. Because he thought secrecy was safer. He was wrong about some things, but not about Mara. Owen pulled a small envelope from a cabinet. This came by courier 2 days before Mr. Whitaker died, he said. He told me to give it to you if anything happened. I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a copy of a forged power of attorney naming Mara as trustee for Piper. The notary stamp was fake. That's a felony, I muttered. Ed. Piper covered her mouth. She really did this? Yes. I slid the paper to her. This is why you don't sign anything she sends you. She stared at the document, then at me. What are we going to do? We're going to handle it, I said. Step by step. Starting now. I pulled out my notebook and began drafting a plan. Owen, you'll install the new cameras today. Piper, you'll help me scan and upload all these documents to a secure server. Tonight I'll call Neil and have him prepare an objection to any filings Mara makes. Piper nodded slowly. Okay. We spent the next several hours working. Owen moved through the property, installing hidden cameras at the dock, the lighthouse, and the boathouse. Piper and I scanned contracts, emails, and maps, saving them to encrypted drives. She was quiet, but focused. At one point, she said, "She sounded so nice on the phone, like she really cared." "She's good at sounding nice," I said. "That's how she gets what she wants." By late afternoon, the war room was in better order than when we'd found it. Files labeled, drives backed up, locks changed. I felt the same kind of clarity I used to feel before a mission, every piece of gear checked, every contingency planned. We stepped out into the cool air. The sun hung low over the water, throwing long shadows across the island. Piper squinted toward the mainland. "Do you think she'll come here?" she asked. "She'll try," I said, "but she won't catch us off guard." Back at the main house, Owen handed me a printout from the new camera system. The boathouse feeds live again. Motion sensors armed. Any movement, we'll get an alert. "Good work," I said. Piper dropped onto the couch, rubbing her temples. "This is insane," she murmured. "I feel like we're in some kind of operation." "We are," I said simply. "We're protecting our home." She looked up at me then, a flicker of resolve in her eyes. "Okay, tell me what to do next." I handed her a stack of non-disclosure forms Neil had sent. "Sign these. They'll let him act on our behalf in court." She signed without hesitation. "Done." I tucked the papers into a folder and set it aside. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of a boat engine. Owen glanced out the window but said nothing. I poured 3 mugs of coffee and set them on the table. "We'll keep going," I said. No one argued. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the gulls and the distant hum of the generator, the kind of silence that comes just before a plan hardens into action. The first thing I did the next morning was lace up my boots, grab a clipboard, and step outside before the coffee had even finished brewing. The island air was sharp and cold enough to wake every nerve. The ground was still damp from last night's tide. Owen was already at the dock checking the motion sensors we'd installed. Piper stood on the porch with her hood up, arms crossed, trying to look awake. "Today we secure the property properly," I said. "No more improvising." I spread a laminated map of the island on the picnic table. "We're going to do this like an operation. Perimeter sweep at 0 to 900. Lockdown checklist. Communications check. File a report with the sheriff. Piper, you'll back up the evidence, drive to the cloud at Neil's secure link. Owen, you'll handle hardware." They both nodded. Piper looked wary but didn't complain. We started with the dock. Owen walked me through the new camera placements, the hidden sensors under the planks, and a small solar-powered repeater he'd mounted on the lighthouse to extend the signal. "Any boat within 50 yards will ping the system now," he said. "Good," I replied. "We'll set up a routine of hourly checks." From there, we moved to the boathouse. The broken lock had been replaced with a reinforced one. Owen had mounted a new camera above the door. Inside, the equipment was organized and tagged. I ran my hand along the shelves, checking for gaps. "What exactly did Dad keep here?" Piper asked. "Survey gear, small drones, hydrophones," Owen said. "Nothing dangerous, but valuable." "Make a manifest," I told him. "We need a baseline." And, back at the main house, I set up a whiteboard in the study. On it, I drew a simple grid of the island, marking sensor locations, building entrances, and camera coverage. Piper watched me write and finally said, "You're turning this into a base." "I'm turning it into something we can control," I said. "That's how you stay ahead." I handed her a list of tasks. Scan and upload the remaining files. Label them clearly. Send them to Neil. Every document we secure is one less weapon your aunt can use. While she worked on the laptop, I called the sheriff's office. "This is Commander Sloan Mercer," I said. "I'm reporting a break-in at Granite Harbor Island Boathouse. Unknown suspects, evidence of forced entry." The deputy on the line took the report and promised to send someone out later in the week. I asked him to flag any unusual maritime activity in our area. He agreed. When I hung up, Piper was still typing. "Neil's system is solid," she said. "He's encrypting everything on his end." "Good," I said. "We'll need it." By midday, we had a functioning command post in the study. The hard drives were in a locked drawer. The cameras streamed to a dedicated monitor. Owen installed two-way radios in the house, the boathouse, and the lighthouse. "Backup power for everything," he said, plugging in a battery bank. "Run a test tonight," I said. Piper came over with a printed sheet. "I've organized the files into 3 folders: legal evidence, financial trails, and technical projects." "Perfect," I said. "Print a copy of the index and store it off-site." We broke for a quick lunch, sandwiches from supplies in the pantry. Piper seemed calmer now, her shoulders less tense. She was seeing the island not as a mystery but as a system she could help manage. After lunch, I led her and Owen through a dry run of an emergency scenario. If an unauthorized boat lands here, Owen calls me on radio channel 1. Piper goes to the safe room upstairs and locks the door. I intercept at the dock. No heroics, just procedure. Piper rolled her eyes but nodded. "Got it. Say it back," I said. "Owen calls you. I go upstairs, you handle the dock." "Good." We spent the rest of the afternoon reinforcing doors and installing motion lights along the paths. Owen showed me a hidden storage compartment under the guesthouse floorboards where Grant had kept spare fuel and batteries. I inventoried everything and updated the map. At one point, Piper came up beside me. "This feels like when you used to run drills at home before deployments," she said. "It's the same principle," I replied. "Prepare when it's quiet, so you're not scrambling when it's loud." She gave a small smile. "You actually like this, don't you?" "I like being ready," I said. "It beats being caught off guard." Late in the afternoon, Owen approached with a printout from the new system. "We had a ping at 1,400 hours, he said. "Boat passed within 40 yards of the lighthouse, slowed, then moved on." "Did the camera catch it?" I asked. He handed me a still image. A small white motorboat, 2 figures in hooded jackets. No visible markings. "Send it to Neil," I said. "Ask him to run the registration if possible." Piper looked over my shoulder. "Could be anyone." "How?" "Could be," I said, "but we'll keep track anyway." We moved on to the lighthouse. The climb up the spiral staircase was narrow and smelled of salt and rust. At the top, the view stretched across the bay to the hazy mainland. I scanned with binoculars, noting any vessels. Nothing but lobster boats far off. From up here you can see all approach routes, I said to Piper. If you're ever unsure, come here. She peered out at the water. It's beautiful, but it feels like everyone's watching us. Maybe they are, I said. That's why we watch back. We descended and walked back toward the main house. Along the path, Owen stopped to adjust one of the new motion lights. This one's on a sensor. Anything bigger than a raccoon sets it off. Good, I said. Layered defense. Inside the house, I updated the whiteboard with new data. Piper sat across from me, filling in a spreadsheet of our equipment. She looked more serious now, the teenage attitude replaced with something closer to focus. Do you think Aunt Mara knows we're doing all this? She asked. She'll assume we're doing nothing, I said. That's her mistake. Owen came in from the porch wiping his hands. Dock sensors are all green. We're as secure as we can be without turning this into Fort Knox. It's enough for now, I said. Good work. We sat down at the kitchen table. Piper pushed her hair back from her face. I'm tired, she said, but it feels better doing something. That's the point, I said. Action beats fear. I poured 3 cups of coffee and set them down. Outside the windows, the light was fading, the ocean turning steel blue. The lighthouse beam clicked on again, sweeping across the water. Owen adjusted the radio on his belt. I'll do another perimeter check after dinner. I'll join you, I said. Piper, finish the index and lock the drives. Okay, she said, already typing. The house smelled faintly of coffee and salt. Every door had a new lock, every camera, a live feed. The whiteboard showed a clean layout of our defenses. On the table lay the brass key, the hard drive, and a growing stack of evidence against my sister. The island felt different now, less like a target, more like a post under control, waiting for the next move. By mid-morning, the hard drive on my desk pinged with a new email notification. Neil had forwarded a packet from 2 separate firms, Blue Current Title and Atlantic Fiber Link, each demanding written confirmation of who held legal ownership of Granite Harbor Island. Both were polite but firm. Their engineers and lawyers needed to know who to negotiate with before they committed to new contracts. I printed the letters and set them side by side. Piper walked in with 2 mugs of coffee and glanced at the headers. Why are they writing to you? She asked. Because this island is a strategic asset, I said. And because your aunt has probably been telling them she's in charge. Piper read the top page, lips moving. They're saying we have 48 hours to respond or they'll suspend all work. Exactly. I slid the letters into a folder. They're testing us. If we hesitate, they'll assume she's the point of contact. Owen came in from outside with a folder under his arm. Another skiff passed the lighthouse at dawn, he said. Same type as yesterday, but with a tarp over the bow. No markings. Log it, I said, and send Neil the timestamp. Piper set down the mugs. I hate this. It's like we're under siege. We're not under siege, I said. We're being pressured. There's a difference. One you can fight with weapons, the other with documents. She snorted a laugh at that, but her eyes were still worried. I called Neil on the secure line. Draft a response to both companies, I said. Confirm that I am the sole legal owner, and that any agreements must go through me directly. Copy Piper as secondary contact, but make clear she's not authorized to sign anything. Neil's keyboard clacked in the background. Done. I'll send you a draft in 30 minutes. Also, I added, start preparing to object to any power of attorney filings from Mara Whitaker. We have evidence of forgery. Send me the scans, he said. They're on the secure server already. Good. I'll move fast. Ard. I hung up and turned to Piper. Check your phone. She frowned at the screen. 2 missed calls from Aunt Mara. 1 voicemail. Play it on speaker. Mara's voice filled the room, syrupy but firm. Piper, sweetheart. I'm so sorry your mom is dragging you through this. She's out of her depth. Call me back today. We can sign papers to protect you before the companies pull out. Don't let her ruin what your father built. Piper's hands shook. She makes it sound so reasonable. Add tree. That's the point, I said. Don't call her back. I won't, she muttered, but she looked away. I pushed a legal pad toward her. Then help me make a list of everything your father had in progress with Blue Current and Atlantic Fiber Link. The more we know, the less they can spin. For the next 2 hours, we worked through binders and digital files, building a timeline of contracts, environmental approvals, and engineering milestones. Piper typed while I dictated. Owen came and went, installing new motion sensors along the South Trail. The house smelled of coffee and printer ink. At noon, Neil emailed back the draft letters. I reviewed them, made minor edits, and signed electronically. Piper hit send to both companies. There, she said. Now they know. Good, I said. That buys us some room. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop before you embarrass yourself. This can still be amicable. I showed it to Owen. Her? He said simply. I deleted it and went back to the whiteboard. In the afternoon, a new article popped up online. Headline: Military Officer's Widow Holds Main Community Asset Hostage. The byline belonged to a small but loud blog that often ran sponsored posts. The article quoted unnamed family sources, saying Grant had promised the island to the community and that I was blocking a public project. Piper read over my shoulder. This is garbage. That's how she'll play it, I said. Smear first. Negotiate later. She's making you look like the villain. I've been called worse, I said, scribbling media counter on my pad. Owen looked grim. Want me to call a friend at the sheriff's office to flag the article? Not yet, I said. Let Neil handle the legal side. We handle facts. Piper slammed her laptop chute. She's turning everyone against you. Against us. I put a hand on her shoulder. Then we keep our heads clear and our evidence tighter than hers. Ope. She didn't shrug me off this time. We moved into the kitchen and made quick sandwiches. Owen spread a nautical chart on the counter, showing me the main undersea cable routes near the island. This is why the companies care, he said. This position cuts transit time and cost. Whoever controls the easements controls the money. That's exactly why she's desperate, I said. She's already taken $2 million and promised results. Piper chewed her sandwich. What happens if she can't deliver? She'll try to pin it on us, I said. Or force a sale. After lunch, we tested the new radio system. Owen went to the lighthouse. Piper stayed at the main house, and I went to the boathouse. We ran through call signs, signal checks, and a mock alert. Everything worked. Back inside, Piper handed me a sheet. I made a list of every time Aunt Mara contacted me since the funeral, she said. Texts, calls, voicemails, dates, and times. Good job, I said. We'll give that to Neil too. Owen came in wiping sweat from his brow. South path sensors are up. That covers all land approaches. Perfect, I said. We're done with the basics. Now we plan next steps. I opened a new folder labeled Countermeasures and began outlining tasks. Confirm corporate contacts, prepare press statement, secure offshore backups of evidence, identify any weak points in our legal position. Piper watched me write, her expression shifting from anxious to intent. I want to help with the statement, she said. I'm good at social media. Draft something factual, no emotion, I said. We're not feeding her narrative. She nodded. Got it. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, glinting off the brass key on the table. Outside, gulls wheeled over the water. The house felt less like a target and more like a command post now, every person with a role. Neil called back just before 4. I filed the initial objection to any power of attorney documents, he said. If she tries to act, the court will flag it. Thank you, I said. She won't give up easily, he warned. She doesn't have to, I said. She just has to lose. I hung up and turned to Piper. How's the draft? She handed me her phone. The message was simple. Granite Harbor Island remains private property under the lawful ownership of Sloan Mercer. No agreements or transfers are valid without her signature. We are committed to environmentally responsible development. Perfect, I said. Send it to the companies, not the press. Let them know we're steady. She tapped send. Done. We sat for a moment in the quiet hum of the house. Outside, the wind shifted, and a bell buoy clanged somewhere out on the water. Owen adjusted the radio on his belt. Piper exhaled slowly and reached for her laptop again. The map on the whiteboard was full of colored pins, now dock, lighthouse, boathouse, sensors, cameras. The folder of evidence was thicker. The smear article sat open on my screen, but it looked smaller than before, just noise against the steady work we were doing. I checked the time and closed my notebook. "Let's keep at it," I said. No one argued. Piper opened another file. Owen walked back toward the dock. The house smelled of coffee and salt, steady and ready. The following morning I opened the curtains to a clear sky and a flat, calm sea. For once the horizon wasn't crowded with stray boats. Piper was already at the kitchen table scrolling through the news on her laptop. "Nothing new about you online," she said without looking up. "That's a good sign," I replied. "Eat something. We have a visitor today." She raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Dr. Colin Rourke," I said. "Marine geologist. Your father used him as an independent consultant. He's agreed to brief us on why this island matters so much." By 9, a small research boat tied up at the dock. A tall man in his 60s stepped off carrying a waterproof case. "Commander Mercer," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your husband spoke highly of you." "I wish I'd known about you earlier," I said. "Come on up." Inside the main house, we cleared the dining table. Dr. Rourke opened his case and spread out maps, sonar scans, and charts. "Granite Harbor Island sits right on the edge of a unique tidal channel," he began. "The currents here are among the strongest on the East Coast, perfect for tidal energy generation. That's why Blue Current is so interested. Combine that with proximity to the new undersea fiber routes, and you've got a goldmine of renewable power and data connectivity." He tapped a shaded area on one map. "This is the corridor Atlantic Fiberlink wants. Shorter distance, fewer environmental hurdles, and they can piggyback on the tidal infrastructure for maintenance." Piper leaned over the table. "So Dad knew all this?" "He commissioned half of these studies," Rourke said, "but he kept them quiet. Said he wanted to secure the legal framework before making anything public." I crossed my arms. "Did he mention his sister?" Rourke hesitated. "He said she'd been reaching out to investors claiming family control. I told him to get everything in writing." I opened a folder and slid across the copies of the wire transfers to Mara's shell company. She took $2 million in advance. Rourke let out a low whistle. "She's way over her head. These investors won't wait forever. If she can't deliver, she's in breach." "She's trying to use us to deliver," I said. "She's pressuring my daughter to sign over the property." He looked at Piper. "Don't sign anything." "I'm not," she said quietly. Rourke pulled out another sheet showing projected revenues from tidal energy and fiber landing rights. The numbers ran into the tens of millions over 10 years. "This is why you're getting pressure from all sides. Whoever controls this island controls a key node in the next generation of infrastructure." I felt a weight settle on my shoulders, not grief this time, but clarity. Grant hadn't just bought a hideaway, he'd bought leverage. "Thank you, Doctor," I said. "This helps." End of 2. "There's more," he said. He handed me a USB drive. "All raw data, environmental reports, and my own notes. If you need an expert witness, I'll testify." "That's valuable," I said. He packed his maps back into the case. "Be careful, Commander. People get reckless when this much money is at stake." "We're being careful," I said. When he left, I locked the USB drive in the desk. Piper stared at the revenue projections on the table. "I had no idea," she said. "Neither did I replied. "But now we do." Owen came in wiping his hands on a rag. "I saw your guest off," he said. "Boat heading back to the mainland. No other traffic on the water." "Good," I said. "We need quiet to process this." We spent the next hour going through the USB drive. Detailed surveys of seabed composition, tide charts, cable route proposals, and draft agreements. Grant had labeled everything meticulously. One file caught my eye. Side letter, MW. I opened it. It was a scanned agreement between Mara and a private equity firm promising them first rights to energy and cable easements on the island in exchange for $2 million upfront and 5% of future revenues. The signature block bore her name and a forged-looking Piper Whittaker signature as beneficiary. Piper's face went white. "She forged my name?" "Looks that way," I said. "Neil's going to love this." I saved the file under critical evidence and backed it up twice. Then I printed a copy for the physical folder. Owen leaned over my shoulder. "With this and the forged power of attorney, she's cooked." "She's not cooked until a judge says so," I said. "But we're building a solid case." Piper sat back, hugging herself. I feel like Dad left us a bomb to defuse. He left us the tools to handle it, I said. That's different. We took a break for lunch, simple sandwiches and fruit from the pantry. The atmosphere in the kitchen was tense but focused. Piper was quieter, scrolling through her phone but not texting anyone. Owen checked the camera feeds every few minutes. After lunch, I led Piper back down to the bunker. We laid out the new maps from Rourke alongside Grant's old ones. The overlay was almost perfect. He'd been planning this for years. Look here, I said, pointing at a section marked Phase 4. This is a future expansion zone. If Bluecurrent and Atlantic Fiber Link both build here, this island becomes the central hub for power and data. Piper shook her head. And Aunt Mara thought she could just take it? She thought she could bluff her way in before we knew the details, I said. Now we know. Owen set a new lock on the inner door and checked the ventilation system. All sealed, he reported. Good, I said. Let's upload the side letter to Neil right now. Piper did it from the bunker laptop. A few minutes later, Neil replied with a simple text. Got it. This is huge. Back upstairs, I called Neil on the secure line. We have a side letter showing Mara took $2 million from investors and forged Piper's signature. I said. Neil's voice sharpened. That's criminal fraud. I'll prepare filings immediately. Do it, I said. I hung up and looked at Piper. This is why your father kept quiet. He was building evidence. She nodded slowly. I get it now. Owen poured coffee for everyone. What's the next move? We keep securing, keep documenting, I said. No drama, just facts. We spent the rest of the afternoon photographing every page of the side letter and related documents, then locking them in a fireproof safe. Piper organized a new binder labeled Mara Evidence. Owen updated the security log with the visitors' arrival and departure times. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened with incoming clouds. The wind picked up, rattling the windows. I stood at the porch watching whitecaps form on the water. Somewhere out there, Mara's promises to investors were unraveling. Inside, Piper sat at the table, flipping through a photo album of her father. She looked up at me, her expression calmer than it had been in days. He really was trying to protect us, she said. Yes, I said. And now it's our turn. Owen adjusted the radio on his belt and scanned the water with binoculars. No boats in sight, he reported. Keep it that way, I said. I closed the door against the rising wind. The house smelled of salt and coffee and fresh paper. The maps and files were stacked neatly on the desk. The hard drive blinked steadily. Piper's notes filled the whiteboard in tidy columns. Every piece of information was now ours, not Mara's. The island no longer felt like a mystery, it felt like a position to hold. Rain swept across the windows the next morning as I woke up before dawn. Instead of lying there thinking, I got dressed, brewed coffee, and opened Neil's overnight email. He'd already filed an emergency motion in probate court to block any transfer of interests on the island and attached draft criminal complaints against Mara for fraud and forgery. His note was blunt. This should freeze her in place long enough for us to take control of the narrative. Keep collecting evidence. I printed the documents and set them on the kitchen table next to Piper's cereal bowl. She came down in a hoodie, hair damp from a quick shower. Another long day? She asked. We're making progress, I said. Neil's already moving. Owen entered from the porch, rain dripping from his jacket. Coast Guard cutter passed offshore about 15 minutes ago, he said. Looked like a routine patrol, but they slowed when they reached our coordinates. That's because I called them, I said. Your father filed for a restricted zone around the title test area. Mara's contractors violated it twice last month. The Coast Guard has the reports. Piper blinked. Dad had a restricted zone? Test equipment, I said. And to keep unauthorized boats out. Neil wants every violation documented. By 8 o'clock, a small Coast Guard launch appeared at the dock. 2 officers in rain gear stepped out. The taller one introduced himself as Lieutenant Knox. Commander Mercer? He asked. That's me, I said, flashing my retired ID. Come in out of the rain. End quote. Inside the house, Knox set his clipboard on the table. We received reports of unauthorized vessels near your tidal array last week. We'd like to confirm boundaries and inspect your equipment. Of course, I said. I handed him the original permit paperwork Grant had filed, including maps of the restricted area. My husband documented multiple incursions by a vessel registered to an LLC controlled by Mara Whitaker. Knox raised his eyebrows. We'll take a look at that. Unauthorized entry into a restricted test zone is a serious offense. He sent his partner back to the boat to retrieve a tablet. If you don't mind, Commander, I'd like to see the security footage. Owen led him to the control room we'd set up off the kitchen. Multiple screens showed camera feeds from around the island and the underwater array. Knox scrolled through timestamps. Here, Owen said, pointing. That's the vessel. Knox zoomed in, capturing the registration number. Perfect, he said. That's enough for a violation notice. If they damaged anything, it's also grounds for civil action. They were probably looking for leverage, I said. Or sabotage, Knox replied. Either way, you've got us on your side. While Knox compiled his report, Piper sat at the counter reading Neil's filings. Mom, look at this, she said quietly. The motion asks the court to seize Mara's accounts until she explains the missing money. That's standard, I said, but it will hurt her. Knox finished and handed me a copy of his preliminary notice. We'll serve the LLC registered agent today, he said. I'll keep you updated. Thank you, Lieutenant, I said. My husband always said the Coast Guard were the quiet professionals. Knox smiled faintly. We try. He shook my hand and left. After they departed, the house felt calmer, like a defensive perimeter had just been reinforced. Piper exhaled. It's weird seeing all these agencies lined up with us, she said. That's what happens when you have facts, I replied. We spent the next hour photographing the tidal array permits and uploading digital copies to Neil. Then I opened the blue folder and added the Coast Guard notice on top. The evidence pile was growing. At noon, Neil called on the secure line. The court granted our emergency motion, he said. No transfers, no sales, no new encumbrances. I've also filed a notice with the Maine Attorney General regarding possible securities fraud. Good work, I said. We just had the Coast Guard here. They're issuing a violation notice to Mara's LLC for entering the restricted zone. Neil chuckled. That's perfect. It shows a pattern. What's next? I asked. I've scheduled the first deposition for next week, he said. We'll subpoena her bank records and the original investor agreements. I want Piper present, but only as an observer. Oh. She'll be there, I said. After the call, I found Piper in the study. She was scanning one of Grant's encrypted drives. I found a video, she said. Looks like Dad recorded it a year ago in the bunker. We watched it together on the big monitor. Grant looked healthy and focused. If you're seeing this, Sloan, then the legal fight has started, he said. Mara will use every tactic, emotional, financial, and public, to force a settlement. Don't negotiate until you have all the evidence. File first. Control the venue. Document everything. He leaned closer to the camera. I've stored copies of every permit, contract, and investor approach in the subfolder labeled Shield. If you need an expert witness, call Dr. Rourke. If they cross the restricted zone, call the Coast Guard immediately. Piper glanced at me. He really planned for everything. I nodded, throat tight but steady. He knew them better than we did. 1. We spent the next several hours cataloging the Shield folder. It contained every email Mara had sent investors claiming control of the island, every proposal she'd floated, and even a draft press release falsely stating she had secured family approval. Grant had annotated each file with his own notes. Owen entered carrying a tray of sandwiches. You two need fuel, he said. We ate at the work table, surrounded by maps and screens. The rain had slowed to a mist, and through the window the ocean was a flat gray sheet. Neil's motion bought us time, I said. Now we use it. Piper straightened. What do you want me to do? Keep going through these files. Flag anything that shows misrepresentation or fraud. Got it, she said. By late afternoon, we had built a timeline of Mara's actions. First, the secret side letter, then forged signatures, then illegal boat incursions. Each event lined up neatly with investor milestones. Owen tapped the whiteboard with a marker. She's desperate, he said. She promised delivery she can't make. She's not going to make it off our backs, I said. Piper added a final note under the timeline. Court order in effect. No transfer. She stepped back, studying the board like a battle plan. I watched her, seeing in her posture the same quiet focus Grant had shown in his videos. For the first time, she wasn't just reacting. She was working with me. Outside, the mist thickened into fog, wrapping the island in a soft gray curtain. The hum of the generator was the only sound. We sealed the evidence drives in the safe and closed the bunker door behind us. The house smelled faintly of coffee and damp paper. Upstairs, Piper opened a window to let in the cool air. "It feels different now," she said. "It is different," I said. "We're no longer on the defensive." "Sex." She smiled faintly. "Dad would be proud." I didn't answer. I just looked at the evidence board one more time, each piece a solid brick in the wall we were building. The island felt less like an inheritance and more like a command post. Facts, maps, and orders replacing the uncertainty of the past weeks, everything moving toward clarity without a single word about an ending. The fog still clung to the island the next morning when I sat down with my second cup of coffee and opened my email. 3 new headlines blared from the screen, all variations of the same theme. Military widow blocking community energy project. Private island greed threatens main jobs. Sister of defense engineer says she's shut out a family legacy. Each article quoted Mara as the brave whistleblower trying to rescue the island from me. Piper came in with her own mug and froze when she saw the headlines. "She's everywhere," she muttered. "She's paying for placement," I said calmly. "You can tell by the identical wording. It's a coordinated push." Owen entered carrying a small box of tools. "2 of the cameras went offline last night," he said. "Not whether somebody hit the feed. Looks like a remote hack." I stood immediately. "Show me." We moved into the control room. 2 black squares glared from the grid of camera feeds. Owen pulled up the log file. "Signal drop at 2:13. Someone tried brute force passwords." "Anyone ashore?" I asked. "No movement sensors triggered," he said. "Could be off island." I took a breath, shifting into a familiar mental gear. "All right. We treat this like a counterintelligence operation. First, lock out the entire network. Change every password. Disconnect anything not essential. Second, set up a separate offline recorder for the cameras so even if they hack in again, they get nothing live." Owen nodded. "Already moving." "Piper," I said, "pull up every article Mara has pushed in the last 24 hours. Screenshot them all. Make a timeline." She opened her laptop, jaw tight. "Got it." I began drafting a counterstatement for Neil to send to the press. No emotion, just facts. Commander Sloan Mercer is the sole lawful owner of Granite Harbor Island. Any claims to the contrary are under legal dispute. No public easements have been granted. All statements to the opposite are false. Short, sharp, verifiable. "Send this to Neil," I told Piper. "Let him distribute through his channels." How end? While she worked, I called a former colleague from my Navy days who now ran a small cybersecurity firm. "I need a quick assessment of a possible breach," I said. "Nothing classified, just a private system." He asked for the logs. I emailed them immediately. "I'll have a report for you in a few hours," he said. When I hung up, Piper looked up from her screen. "She's got an article on every major local outlet, even a radio interview scheduled at noon." "Perfect," I said. "That means she's playing offense. We're about to take her footing out from under her." Owen returned from the equipment closet. "I've isolated the cameras on an air-gapped recorder. No more remote access." "Good," I said. "Now check the physical locks." He left again without question. I sat next to Piper. "Show me the screenshots." She scrolled through them. Same quotes, same phrases, same headshot of Mara in a blazer looking concerned. She's using words like protect, community, and legacy. I jotted notes on a pad. Then we counter with fraud, forgery, and illegal entry. People may like a savior story, but they hate being conned. At 10, Neil called. "I've seen the media blitz," he said. "Don't respond directly. I'll issue a legal statement citing the forged documents and the Coast Guard violation. That'll chill the outlets." "Do it," I said. "Also, our cameras were hacked at 2:13. We've isolated the system, but we may need a forensic report." "Send me everything," he said. "Already did." After the call, I went outside to inspect the boathouse. The fog muffled sound, turning every gull cry into an echo. Owen met me there. "No signs of forced entry," he said. "Locks intact." "Good," I said. "We'll assume remote only." Back in the house, Piper had finished the timeline of articles. It was almost comical in its precision, 7 outlets, Identical stories, launched within 30 minutes. Copy this to Neil, I said, and save a local copy. She did. I can't believe she's doing this, she said. She's making me look like the ungrateful kid who won't share. That's because she can't win legally, I said. This is her only play. I led Piper down to the bunker. We laid out all our evidence again, this time in a single line across the table. The forged power of attorney, the side letter with investors, the Coast Guard violation notice, the media timeline, a visual map of her scheme. Piper stared at it. It's like a board game. It's like a battle map, I corrected. And we're not moving pieces randomly. We're executing a plan. I photographed the layout for Neil. Then I opened a fresh notebook titled Counterattack. In it, I listed our assets: legal filings, expert witness, Rourke, regulatory allies, Coast Guard, technical evidence, and now cyber logs. Under next moves, I wrote deposition prep, public narrative, physical security, investor outreach. Owen joined us, carrying a small drone. Found this in the storage room, he said. Coast Guard spec but unregistered. Mr. Whitaker used it for shoreline surveys. Charge it, I said. We'll run our own patrols. He nodded and set it on the workbench. We spent the next hour cleaning up the war room, replacing maps with updated versions and pinning new photos on the board. Piper wrote labels in neat block letters. The room smelled of paper and fresh coffee from the thermos I'd brought. When we emerged upstairs, the fog had started to lift. The lighthouse beam cut through in slow arcs. I felt that familiar calm I used to feel on deployment right before executing a counterplan. Owen returned from the porch. No boats on the horizon, he reported, tides turning. Launch the drone after lunch, I said. Let's see if we can get aerial shots of any vessels lurking beyond sensor range. He grinned slightly. Yes, Commander. Piper was at the kitchen counter drafting a neutral statement for social media. Something like this? She asked. I read it. We remain focused on protecting Granite Harbor Island and its environmental and legal integrity. False claims will be addressed in court. We appreciate community support. Perfect, I said. Post it quietly and leave it at that. She tapped send. After lunch, Owen took the drone out and launched it from the lighthouse balcony. We watched its camera feed on a tablet as it rose above the island, panning slowly. No boats within a mile, just gray water and gulls. Good to know, I said. Piper leaned against the railing. It feels less scary when we're doing something, she said. That's the point, I replied. We went back inside and I updated the counterattack notebook with our progress. Neil texted back. Statement released. 2 outlets already pulled the story pending verification. I showed it to Piper. See? Facts beat noise. She smiled for the first time in days. I like this side of you, she said. It's just the side your father always counted on, I said. Owen came in with the drone. Battery low but all clear, he said. Good work, I replied. We gathered around the kitchen table. The whiteboard showed our defenses. The evidence binder was thicker than ever. The media smear was already wobbling. And for the first time since stepping onto the island, I felt our position shift from reactive to proactive. The generator hummed steadily, the tide rolled in and out, and the brass key lay on the table between us, silent proof of control, built on action, not headlines. The drone battery was still warm in Owen's hands when I stepped back onto the porch and looked at the water. For the first time since Grant's funeral, the sky over the bay was clear and blue, the kind of day fishermen call honest weather. I took a long breath and made a decision. It's time to bring people in, I said. Piper glanced up from the table where she was sorting evidence files. Who? Local stakeholders, I replied. People Dad respected, the ones Mara's been telling stories to. If we're transparent with them here, on our ground, they'll stop believing her narrative. End quote. Owen nodded slowly. You want to do it on the island? Yes, I said. No more shadows. By mid-morning, I was on the radio to Captain Ellis, a veteran fisherman who'd known Grant since his first bid on the island. Then to Dana McKee, the town council's environmental officer. Then to 2 engineers from Blue Current who had been quietly emailing me for weeks, asking for clarity. I invited each of them to a meeting at the main house that afternoon. Come see the facts yourselves, I told them. Piper listened as I made the calls. Are you sure it's safe to bring them here? I'm sure it's necessary, I said. Sunlight beats rumor. We spent the next 2 hours preparing. Owen checked every camera and sensor, then swept the dock with a handheld scanner for hidden transmitters. Piper printed out color copies of the key evidence: Mara's forged documents, the side letter, the Coast Guard violation notice, and Dr. Rourke's revenue projections. We laid them out on the long dining table like exhibits in a courtroom. At noon, I made sandwiches and coffee for everyone. Piper helped me carry chairs from the porch into the living room. Owen placed a small portable projector on the sideboard, ready to show maps. The house began to look less like a hideout and more like a briefing room. Just before 1, the first boat appeared at the dock. Captain Ellis climbed out, a barrel-chested man with a windburned face. "Commander," he said, shaking my hand. "Didn't think I'd ever see inside this place." "Welcome," I said. Behind him came Dana McKee with a canvas bag full of binders. The Blue Current engineers arrived last, carrying laptops and notebooks. Owen escorted them all up the path. Piper stood by the door, clearly nervous but holding her ground. Inside, I introduced everyone quickly. You've all heard conflicting things about Granite Harbor Island. Today I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. I began with the basics. Grant's purchase of the island, his permits for title testing, his negotiations with Atlantic Fiberlink and Blue Current. I showed them the actual contracts and the environmental reports. I explained Mara's role, how she'd approached investors without authority, taken money, and forged signatures. Dana flipped through the copies, her brows knitting. "She's been telling the council you were stalling on public access," she said. "She even gave us a draft agreement supposedly signed by you." I held up the forged power of attorney. "That's what she gave you," I said. "This is why we filed in court." Captain Ellis leaned back in his chair. I knew something smelled off. She promised the Harbor Committee new moorings out of her community fund. Never saw a dime. One of the Blue Current engineers spoke up. "We've been caught in the middle." She told our board she controlled the easements. We were ready to walk away. "Don't walk," I said. "Look at the data. Look at the permits. This is a legitimate project, but it has to be done legally." I clicked on the projector. The war room maps filled the wall. Undersea cable routes, tidal current charts, projected revenues. "This is what's at stake," I said. "Renewable power and high-speed data for the region. Jobs, environmental protections, and revenue for Maine." Grant spent years making sure it was sound. I'm not blocking progress. I'm blocking fraud. The room went quiet except for the hum of the projector. Dana closed her binder. "If these documents are real, she's in serious trouble." "They're real," I said. "And you're free to take copies back with you." Captain Ellis tapped the table. "Tell me what you need. Right now, just truth," I said. "If the council or the press asks, tell them you saw the evidence. Tell them no agreements are valid without my signature. We're still committed to the project, but only under lawful conditions." The Blue Current engineers exchanged glances. "We'll take this back to our legal team," one said. "This changes everything." "Good," I replied. "If your board wants direct negotiations, I'm ready." We moved to the kitchen for coffee. Piper poured while the guests talked quietly among themselves. She looked more at ease now, even smiling as she handed out mugs. After the coffee, Dana approached me privately. "We've been under pressure from her for months," she said. "She made it sound like you were unstable, that you were hiding things." "That's her pattern," I said. "I can't fight every rumor individually. I can only show facts." "You've done that," Dana said. "I'll brief the council myself." Captain Ellis shook my hand again at the door. "Grant would have been proud," he said simply. Owen escorted them back to their boats. The Blue Current engineers lingered on the dock, taking photos of the lighthouse and jotting notes. Piper stood on the porch watching them go, shoulders squared. Inside, the house felt different, lighter. The table was still covered with evidence, but now it had been seen, not hidden. The maps on the wall looked less like secrets and more like plans. Owen returned from the dock and shut the door. "They're gone," he said. "No unknown vessels nearby. Sensors all green." And Piper came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. "That felt good," she said. "Because it was real," I replied. "No spin, no smear, just facts." She smiled faintly. I liked seeing their faces when they realized what Aunt Mara was doing. "That's how you beat a con," I said. "Show people the cards." We sat at the table finishing our coffee. The projector still glowed faintly on the wall, showing the island's outline in soft blue light. Outside, gulls wheeled in the sun, and the tide rolled gently against the rocks. I gathered the documents back into their folders and locked them in the safe. Owen updated the log with the visitors' names and times. Piper wrote, "Stakeholders briefed," on the whiteboard in neat letters. The brass key lay in its usual place on the table, next to the hard drive. For the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like control earned. The island wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a network of facts and allies we'd built ourselves. Owen poured the last of the coffee into his mug. "What's next?" he asked. I looked at the map of the island and then at my daughter. "We keep going," I said simply. No one argued. Piper opened another folder. The house hummed with quiet work, the steady rhythm of a plan carried out in daylight with no pause. No hint of an end point, only each task done as it came, the island holding steady under our hands. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when I zipped my suit bag shut and set it by the door. Piper stood in the hallway with a neat stack of folders under her arm. She'd dressed in a plain navy blazer and slacks, her hair pulled back. The calm look on her face was all focus, no hesitation. "You sure about this?" Owen asked quietly from the kitchen doorway. He had his radio on his belt and a thermos in his hand. "I'm sure," I said. "We don't hide behind lawyers anymore." By 7, we were on the ferry to Portland, the wind whipping off the water. Piper and I sat side by side going over our notes. Across the aisle, Neil was already on his phone, confirming the mediation session with the court officer. 2 hours on the calendar, he said. No press, no cameras, just the parties and the mediator. "That's all we need," I replied. When we arrived at the courthouse conference center, the security guard waved us through after checking IDs. The room was a neutral beige with a long oak table, a pitcher of water, and 2 sets of chairs facing each other. At one end sat the mediator, a retired judge with a reputation for patience. At the other end was Mara. She rose when we entered. All polished silk and pearls, her smile fixed, but her eyes tight. "Sloane," she said, voice sweet enough to coat the room. "Piper." I didn't answer. I pulled out a chair and set our folders on the table. Neil took the seat beside me, laptop open. Piper sat to my right, her expression neutral. The mediator cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss the dispute over Granite Harbor Island. My goal is to see whether any agreement can be reached voluntarily. Miss Whitaker, you may begin." Mara launched into a speech about community benefit, about her brother's legacy, about my alleged obstruction. She held up a glossy brochure showing artists' renderings of a Granite Harbor Innovation Hub, complete with boardwalks and visitor centers. "Grant always told me he wanted this island to give back," she said. "I've been working tirelessly to make that happen." When she finished, the mediator turned to me. "Commander Mercer?" I opened the top folder and slid a document across the table. "This is a forged power of attorney purporting to give Miss Whitaker control over my daughter's interests. The notary stamp is fake. We've filed a criminal complaint." I slid the next document, the side letter with investors. Mara's signature above a forged Piper Whitaker. "This promises easements and revenues you have no authority to grant. That's securities fraud." Next came the Coast Guard violation notice. "Your contractors entered a restricted test zone without authorization." I handed over Dr. Rourke's affidavit attesting to the island's strategic value. "These are the facts," I said. "We're not blocking progress. We're protecting lawful development." Mara's smile faltered. "These are misunderstandings," she said. "Grant involved me in every step. He wanted me to shepherd the project until Piper came of age. Grant involved you in nothing," I said calmly. "We have his emails, his notes, and his video messages. You've been lying to investors and the community." The mediator leaned back. "Miss Whitaker, these documents are serious. Do you dispute their authenticity?" Mara's lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, whispered urgently to her. She shook her head but kept her eyes on me. "I did what I had to do," she said finally. "You were never here. He was my brother. And I was his wife," I said. "And this is our daughter. You don't get to steal from us and call it legacy." Neil opened his laptop and projected a timeline of her actions on the wall. Investments taken, documents forged, restricted zones breached, each point backed by evidence. The room went silent except for the hum of the projector. The mediator tapped his pen. Given the filings before the court, any attempt to transfer or encumber the property is already blocked. Miss Whitaker, unless you have exculpatory evidence, you may be facing criminal charges. Mara's lawyer whispered again. This time, she snapped, "Stop," and pushed his hand away. She turned to Piper. "Sweetheart, you don't understand what your mother is doing. She's going to lose everything. Let me fix it for you." Piper straightened in her chair, eyes steady. "You forged my name," she said. "You lied to me about Dad. You're not fixing anything." The words hung in the room. Mara's shoulders sagged a fraction. I took out one final piece. A letter Grant had written months before his death, addressed to the probate court. In it, he named me as sole trustee and described Mara's attempts to interfere. The judge read it carefully. "This is notarized," he said, and filed. Neil closed his laptop. "Given the evidence," he said, "our position is simple. Miss Whitaker withdraws all claims, returns investor funds, and issues a public retraction. We'll agree not to pursue civil damages beyond that. Otherwise, we proceed with criminal referrals." Mara looked at me, then at the mediator. For the first time, her voice lost its polish. "If I give it back, they'll ruin me," she whispered. "You did that yourself," I said. The mediator nodded slowly. "Miss Whitaker, you should confer with counsel." Her lawyer bent close, murmuring furiously. She stared at the table, hands clenched. Piper didn't look away. Finally, Mara spoke, barely audible. "I'll sign whatever you want." Neil slid a prepared agreement across the table. She skimmed it, then scribbled her signature with a trembling hand. The mediator took the papers and stamped them. "This agreement will be filed with the court today. Miss Whitaker withdraws all claims and acknowledges Commander Mercer's sole ownership. Investor funds will be returned within 30 days. Any misrepresentation is referred to the Attorney General." I closed my folder and stood. "We're done here. I tell thing." Piper rose beside me. Mara didn't look up. Outside the conference center, the air smelled of salt and diesel from the harbor. Neil tucked the signed papers into his briefcase. "That was decisive," he said. "She underestimated us," I replied. Piper slipped her hand into mine. "She underestimated Dad, too," she said. We walked toward the ferry dock without looking back. The gulls cried overhead, and the tide slapped against the pilings. I felt the tension of weeks start to drain out, replaced by a steady focus on what still needed doing. On board, Owen was waiting with a thermos of coffee. "How'd it go?" he asked. I handed him the copy of the agreement. "She's finished." He scanned it quickly and gave a low whistle. "Solid." Piper sat at the bow, hair blowing in the wind. For the first time since Grant's funeral, she looked less like a kid caught in a storm and more like someone charting her own course. I joined her, resting my elbows on the railing. "You did well in there," I said. "She tried to talk to me like I was still 12, she said. "I'm not." "No," I said. "You're not." The ferry cut through the water toward the island. In the distance, the lighthouse stood against the blue sky, steady and bright. The hard drive in my bag held every document we needed. The signed agreement in Neil's case would go straight to the court. Owen poured coffee into paper cups and handed them around. We drank in silence as the island drew closer, each of us seeing it now not as a burden but as a piece of ground secured through discipline and truth. No theatrics, no cliffhangers, just a position taken and held. When the ferry slid back into the island's dock that afternoon, the water was like glass and the gulls were quiet. Owen tied off the lines while Piper and I stepped onto the pier with Neil right behind us. The papers were filed, the agreement signed, and for the first time the island felt completely ours in more than just name. We walked up the path toward the house. The lighthouse beam swept once across the bay even though the sun was still high. It was just a routine flash, but it felt like punctuation to a long sentence. Piper carried the hard drive and the signed agreement clutched under her arm. She didn't look like someone carrying weight. She looked like someone holding a future. Inside the main house, we spread the documents across the kitchen table. Neil scanned the signatures one more time and nodded. "Court accepted the filing," he said. "Title is clear. Investors will get their funds back. Attorney General's office has a criminal inquiry open." "Good," I said. "Thank you for moving so fast." He closed his laptop. "You did the hard part. My job was paperwork." Piper smiled faintly at that. paperwork that saved us. Neil packed up his briefcase and stood. I'll head back on the last ferry. Call me if you need anything else. Safe trip, I said, shaking his hand. When the door closed, the house seemed to exhale. Owen set a pot of coffee on the stove and leaned against the counter. So what's next, Commander? I looked at the whiteboard on the wall: maps, evidence, notes, all the colored pins and arrows we'd added over the past weeks. Slowly, one by one, I began erasing them. Piper joined me, wiping clean the corners until only the outline of the island remained. This board served its purpose, I said. Now we plan, not defend. We moved to the war room bunker. The air inside was cool and dry, the maps still pinned neatly. I opened the safe and took out Grant's last envelope, the one marked final. Inside was a short letter written in his precise hand. Sloan, if you're reading this, you've secured what we built. Don't let it sit. Make it work. Partner with people who will respect it. Give Piper a stake so she learns to lead, and give yourself permission to move forward. I read it aloud to Piper. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, then folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Owen cleared his throat. Blue Current called while you were gone, he said. They're ready to negotiate directly with you. Good, I said. We'll set terms that protect the environment and the community, and Piper will be on the paperwork. Ender Tech. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes, I said. You've been in every step. It's time you take a formal role. We spent the afternoon drafting our opening proposal for Blue Current and Atlantic Fiberlink. Instead of just selling access, we offered a partnership. Tidal power generation managed under strict environmental oversight, fiber landing rights with community reinvestment and local hiring clauses. Piper typed while I dictated. Owen added practical notes about construction and logistics. When the draft was done, Piper leaned back and looked at the screen. This feels good, she said. Like we're building something instead of just fighting. That's exactly what we're doing, I replied. Outside, the light shifted toward evening. The fog had burned off completely, revealing the coastline in sharp detail. Fishermen's boats moved across the bay like small black silhouettes. The lighthouse beams switched on automatically, sweeping across the water. We took a break on the porch. Owen poured coffee into mugs, while Piper pulled a blanket around her shoulders. I can't believe how much has happened since the funeral, she said quietly. You handled it, I said. You're stronger than you think. She gave a small laugh. I learned from you. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the tide roll in. There was no dramatic finale, no cameras, just the steady work of putting things right. Later we walked down to the old studio building. Grant had left it empty, its windows dusty, workbenches bare. Piper pushed the door open, and sunlight spilled across the wooden floor. We could use this, she said. For what? I asked. Community design space, she said. Workshops on renewable energy, marine conservation. Dad always said he wanted the island to be more than cables and turbines. I smiled. Then make it happen. Then, we walked back to the main house with a list of simple tasks. Clean the studio, order supplies, schedule the first meeting with Blue Current. Nothing urgent, nothing secret, just steps forward. At dinner, we ate simple grilled fish Owen had caught earlier. Piper set the table while I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving since my last deployment. We raised our glasses without ceremony. To making it work, I said. To making it ours, Piper added. The lighthouse beam swept across the windows again, steady as a heartbeat. Afterward, I went to my small office upstairs and filled out the paperwork to return to reserve status with the Navy. It felt right serving again, but with the island secure, not as a retreat but as a responsibility shared. Downstairs, Piper was sketching layouts for the studio project. Owen was at the sink washing dishes, humming quietly. The house smelled of salt, coffee, and fresh paper, the smell of work, not conflict. I looked out the window one last time before turning in. The island lay quiet under the stars, every sensor and camera humming along, every document filed and backed up. No headlines, no intrusions, just the sound of water against the rocks. In the morning, we would start drafting contracts with Blue Current. Piper would lead the community outreach. Owen would manage the island operations, and I would serve as both guardian and guide, exactly what Grant had asked. I closed the window and shut off the light. The island didn't feel like a secret anymore. It felt like a legacy set on firm ground, steady, transparent, and alive under our hands. The island is quiet tonight, the tide sliding in and out like slow breathing, and for the first time since Grant's funeral, the silence feels earned instead of heavy. The maps are rolled up, the evidence is locked away, and the studio is full of sketches instead of secrets. Piper has gone from a teenager unsure of why her father hid things to a young woman building something real with her own name on it. Owen moves around the property like a steady heartbeat, not as a watchman against threats, but as a caretaker of a working project. I stand on the porch with a mug of coffee and watch the lighthouse beam sweep the bay. It's the same beam that was there when I arrived, but it doesn't look like a warning anymore. It looks like a guidepost. What began as a fight over a hidden inheritance has become a clear plan for renewable energy, community benefit, and a future that belongs to all of us, earned through discipline, facts, and a refusal to be bullied. Grant's final letter sits in my pocket. I don't need to read it tonight. I know what it says, and I'm living it.